Now, there are a lot, and I mean a lot of videos on YouTube talking about how the MCU's Phase 4 sucks. And I use that in quotation marks. So, what I want to do in this video is explain why that isn't the case, as well as discuss some complaints fans have had with the movies recently, and give you some of my thoughts and predictions as to what I like to see and what we might see in the next phases of the MCU going forward. So without further ado, let's get into it.
I am the stone that the builder refused. I am the visual, the inspiration that make ladies sing the blues. I'm the spark that makes shit.
I've been saying this for about a while now. Phase 4 of the MCU is about the aftermath of Endgame. It's a transitional period where we see previous characters move on and new characters as well as concepts be introduced. Loki introduces us to not only different timelines, but to Kang as well, who is our next big bad, and who we'll see again in Quantumania. No Way Home brought in the multiverse, and after that, Multiverse of Madness, although yes, we only got very few madness within the multiverse. That movie introduced us to incursions, which is an element that is more often than not connected to Secret Wars. And what movie's coming out in 2025? That's right, Avengers Secret Wars. Also, let's be honest, some fans hyped up Multiverse of Madness so much to the point where they basically disappointed themselves by thinking it was going to be bigger than it was. There are little hints that they've been giving us already that aren't even connected to Kang, or at least from what we know of, with the possible Kree hand being found attached to the bangle in Ms. Marvel, as well as the 10 rings symbol on the floor in that same scene. So from what we can gather, Kamala's bangle is possibly somehow connected to the 10 rings, and those rings are sending a signal to who knows where. We'll obviously have to wait and see. I'm just tired of people saying that they've dropped storylines when we have yet to even meet up with these characters again. Moon Knight is still out there somewhere, he's just minding his own business. Certain characters are not going to know or even care about other things that are happening in the world, either because that's just not that character's jurisdiction, or they simply have no connection to whatever's happening on that side of the world. Everyone doesn't have to know everyone else. The Guardians didn't meet the Avengers until Infinity War, and Captain Marvel didn't meet anyone else until Endgame. The complaints about Phase 4's lack of connectivity and will constantly bother me because the argument this group of fans have, and I use the term loosely, is that the Infinity Saga was planned out perfectly, and that Feige and everyone else at Marvel Studios have ran out of stories, so they're just making movies for the sake of making movies. Firstly, The Infinity Saga wasn't perfectly planned out because they didn't even think they'd get to that point. When they made the first Iron Man film, they made it so that they didn't go bankrupt. Not because they wanted to make this epic 10-year spanning story across 20 plus movies. People forget, or probably just don't even know, that nobody even cared or knew about Iron Man before that movie. But they started with that character and they kept going and realized they could make an Avengers film. Now, these once C-list and B-list characters are household names. The Thanos mid-credit scene was not them teasing something. We didn't just put that in for fun, unbeknownst to everyone at the time that they'd actually get there one day. Secondly, they'll never run out of stories. Marvel Comics have been around for over 80 years, and within those years have produced hundreds of thousands of comic book stories that the studio can pull from and get inspiration for their films. If you're angry that a movie company is continuously making movies, then I don't know what to say. They're a company. They're gonna have to make money somehow. Also, maybe give them a bit of a break, like some slack. I don't know if you heard, but there was a pandemic recently, and the amount of things they had to change and shift around because of it is a lot. Like, Multiverse of Madness was supposed to come out right after WandaVision. And correct me if I'm wrong, but America Chavez was going to be in No Way Home, and she was originally going to be the one to bring in the other Spider-Man. Thirdly, and probably the most important, just because you aren't happy to see the characters they've been introducing lately doesn't mean the entire world feels the same way. There are tons of people happy to see Kamala Khan coming to the big screen. Sam Wilson is Captain America. As we've seen in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Bucky is not in the right headspace. Like, he was not in the right headspace within these movies and in that show to take up that kind of mantle. He's the White Wolf. They've said it like 4 times now. Kate Bishop is Hawkeye, which is something that I don't think I really need to say because a lot of people seem to really welcome that character into this universe. But you know, there's a few angry people about it, even though they never cared about Clint Barton until like the very second that show started. Honestly, I didn't even care about him until Age of Ultron. And then after Civil War, I forgot about him again. And then he came back with a weird haircut and a dumb sleeve tattoo. And then, you know, but even though that look wasn't working for me, I was reminded why I care about him. Speaking of, remember when they announced an Ant-Man movie and literally everyone was confused as to why they were even making a movie about that character? But in time, he ended up being one of the most important heroes that have ever been introduced in the MCU. Literally, without Scott Lang, Tony wouldn't have ever gotten the time travel idea in his head, and everyone would still be depressed. I remember when I was in school, on the Marvel website, looking at the first poster for Ant-Man and questioning if I was even interested in going to see it in theaters. And now, I'm waiting for Quantumania to come out, and I can't wait to see him fight Kang. Speaking of Quantumania, Stature's in that film, and they're clearly setting up some sort of Young Avengers or Ultimates team. Now, who will be on that team, I'm not sure. I don't think we're going to see Speed or Wiccan for a while. And even if we did, they're still too young to, be on a full-on superhero team. And so is T'Challa Jr. I think this Ultimates or Young Avengers or whatever they decide to call them will consist of Spider-Man, Miss Marvel, Stature, possibly Joaquin Torres as Falcon, who we'll see in New World Order, maybe Scar, and Ironheart. We also got White Tiger being introduced in Daredevil Born Again, so she's also a candidate. Although they could make a Defenders group that Daredevil leads with Moon Knight, White Tiger, and Spider-Man on that team as well. Now I want to talk about Ironheart for a moment because I am a sucker for that character and basically anyone related to the Iron Man mythos in general. I can't wait for this show. I love Dominique Thorne's performance in Wakanda Forever. And although I'm not doing a review for that movie, I will say that I wish there was a line where she referenced Tony Stark. I mean, there was the Stark Tech blueprints that Shuri pointed out, but I could have used a little more. And also, let's be honest, you could take the Ross and Valentina scenes out of the movie and it would still roll the same way. But since I've been playing devil's advocate this entire video, I will say that they probably did need to introduce that character in the movies, at least somehow, because not everyone who watches, the movies has Disney Plus, or maybe they do, but they're having trouble keeping up with the shows for whatever reason. So the general audience who probably didn't watch the post-credits scene in Black Widow or Falcon and the Winter Soldier would need to be aware of this character. Anyway, back to Ironheart. What we know from this series is that it'll combine magic with technology through a character known as the Hood. Now, stick with me here, but I'm not a big Fantastic Four fan, although I am a casual fan of Doctor Doom, even though the character has been getting on my nerves because people have been non-stop expecting him to pop up in literally every single project Marvel Studios announces. I've been saying that I'd like to see Doctor Doom be introduced as the infamous Iron Man, and since we know magic is going to be a part of Ironheart, I think that would be a cool place to see him show up, or maybe just introduce him and then make him the villain of like Armor Wars. I honestly think that would be a cool and unpredictable way to introduce that character, because most of us are expecting him to show up in Fantastic Four, but if they introduce him with the infamous Iron Man story, I'd like that very much, personally. But then again, you'll have the regular complaints of everything being too connected to Iron Man. But, I don't mind many things being connected to Stark, as long as they make sense. But then again, that might just be me being biased, as Iron Man is my favorite character when it comes to the Marvel Universe. That character changed my life and introduced me to so much more, even like outside of Marvel. But since we're on the topic, I have to say I really hated the fact that people were expecting Doom to show up in Wakanda Forever. That movie would not have been the right place to bring him in. It's just because of the story and the themes of that film, I don't think it would have been the right time. But yeah, I'd like to see him be brought in as Infamous Iron Man. And then, I don't know, maybe the suit blows up in his face. Or like while he's in it, that's how he becomes the Doom that we all know with the messed up face. Or maybe, and just maybe, stay with me here, because I'm gonna say something pretty out there. I don't think anybody's ever really thought of this. What if Dr. Doom, highly known villain of the Fantastic Four, is introduced in the Fantastic Four movie? Now, I'm not gonna go through this video and act like I don't have my own criticisms. So, here's my MCU Phase 4 tier list from great, good, interesting, and Love and Thunder. As you can see, in the Love and Thunder tier is Love and Thunder. It's the only one at the bottom because I really truly believe that Taika Waititi sacrificed what could have been a beautiful story for comedy and awkward jokes. I think had Feige tightened the leash on him a bit more, we could have gotten a heartfelt movie. But sadly, the Mighty Thor was introduced in a movie that didn't do her or any of the characters in it justice. There was literally no reason for Korg to be in this movie. He served no purpose besides Waititi getting an extra paycheck. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Phase 4 and what I'd like to see and what I think we'd see going forward. This was originally just going to be a rant video, but I wanted to add more substance to it because although ranting can be fun, I think me voicing my thoughts and opinions on the phase as a whole would be a lot better to understand. Whenever I make a prediction about a movie or a show, I never take what I say too seriously, because if I did, I'd just set myself up for disappointment when what I predicted was never promised in an upcoming story to begin with, unlike certain fans who are out there thinking every rumor that comes out is true. I also don't think that there is a such thing as filler when it comes to these connected cinematic universes, or anything for that matter, whether it be a movie, show, or a book. I honestly believe that the word filler has lost its meaning nowadays. Like, both the word filler and woke are empty words now. They don't mean anything anymore. They're just used to describe a thing that someone doesn't like. If we're talking about filler in anime, then yeah, I know what you're talking about. But outside of that, I genuinely believe that there is no such thing as filler in American media. We can look back at Age of Ultron, and so many people didn't like that movie when it came out and thought that it was filler and that it didn't do anything for the overall story within this universe. But watching that movie now, it set up so many things. It set up Civil War, the Infinity Stones, Black Panther, Thanos, and it was the start of Wanda and Vision's character arcs. I think after Endgame, a lot of people came out of that theater waiting for the next big thing to happen, whether that be your Galactus or Doctor Doom or whoever. And thinking about it, this same thing happened after the first Avengers movie. People left the theater waiting for the next big thing to happen, but it took a while because there was an aftermath period where the films focused on the characters and their singular adventures and was slowly setting up the next big thing, which would eventually be Infinity War. We're just in another aftermath period where we're seeing some characters shift around and having a little bit of a break before things start to kick off. A calm before the storm, if you will. And within this sort of intermission, they're experimenting with different projects like She-Hulk or The Eternals and Moon Knight, as well as introducing different tones and styles to their works like Werewolf by Night. The connectivity of the MCU is both a blessing and a curse to this specific part of the fandom because they want things to make sense. But waiting has been a big role to play. But these certain fans don't want to wait for it. They want everything explained to them right out the gate. Like after WandaVision's first 2 episodes, or maybe even just the first episode, people were confused and dropped the show early on because they didn't want to wait for the story to be unfolded for them. They wanted answers, and in looking for answers, they found Mephisto, and in turn they found disappointment. And the same goes for Moon Knight. So many people wanted answers by the very first episode. They dropped it and called it trash because they were waiting for a specific character to show up, that being Mark Spector, and were disappointed because he wasn't what they expected or theorized to be. It always surprises me that a group of people who can suspend their belief and accept the concept of the multiverse and different versions of these characters, but they can't accept a character being introduced in a movie or show that is slightly different than what they are in the original material. There really isn't anything out there like the MCU, so it's really easy to point at this big company that's making money and, make fun of them or try to drag them down. Certain fans forget that there are actual people behind these projects that genuinely want to tell good stories, but all they see is a company trying to make money. Those people are starting to take this for granted, but this is a gift. There's literally something for everyone within this universe that they've created, and it's inspired so many other people to become writers or artists in their own way. I honestly think that it all comes down to patience, and with so many Marvel properties coming out a year, we're waiting for something to happen, and things have been happening. They've just been few and far between, or we probably just missed something that went over our heads that'll be paid off later. And those complaining about Marvel will come back and call Kevin Feige a genius again, as they've done before. But that's the video. I had all these thoughts on my mind for a while, and I just needed to get them out. But yeah. Oh, I'm sick. I hope you all enjoyed. Please leave a like or subscribe if you want, of course, and I'll see you when I see you.